Hi everyone, it's William with the Grand Duke Dmitri YouTube video series, and today we're doing 1915. Cold, 6 degrees below zero in January, so couldn't be more different from what I have today here in the Portland area on July the 8th. Beautiful sunny day, should get up to about 30 degrees. Anyway, here's our recap. So we did, in the previous video, we did 1939, and we had a little description by Grunwald about meeting Vladimir in England and about what Vladimir Kirillich was up to in England, and how he had fallen under the sway of the Germanophile Lord Astor, Viscount Waldorf Astor. I don't know how that came about. How he was working at a factory in a provincial village and not getting proper training for his supposed future role as a Russian ruler. But Grunwald also speaks up for him a little bit. Apparently, Maria had some very harsh words for him, and Grunwald said basically, look, he's no genius, but he's a nice young man, so far as it goes. So yeah, that's what we had. And in our last 1915 diary entry, of course, we had the book about Sergei, rather mysterious. And for today, we have a cast, Father Mikhaev, the Usovo parish priest, a servant named Pribochkin, not sure where the stress is, Grand Duke Sergei again, and Balashova, the woman whom Dmitri informed us he wanted. Okay, so we're up to the 18th, 31st of January. It's Usovo. The weather report for today, 6 degrees below freezing, but clear and sunny. So here we go. I got up only at 11:30, though I'd had the firm intention of going to church. Naturally, I ended up oversleeping. In fact, I was quite late even going outside, so I had to go home almost immediately. Lunch was at 1 o'clock à trois with GM and the Usovo parish priest, who talked a little more this time. Afterwards, GM and I took a sleigh ride through the forest. We wanted to track rabbits, but there's so much snow that it isn't possible to take a single step without skis. Pribochkin drove a rabbit right out from under the house for me, but I missed miserably. Pity. We had tea at 5 o'clock, after which I sat down to read the notes of Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich and continued until it was time for dinner, which I had adieu with GM at 8 o'clock. Then we sat around listening to gramophone music. I read, and then we played nap. Today, I lost everything. We had evening tea around midnight, then parted company. I want to get a reply from Balashova, but nothing has come. Terrible and sad. All right, so, sleeping late again. Boy, I can relate to this. Probably some of you can too. On a Sunday morning, you go to bed on Saturday night with the firm intention, as he puts it, of going to church, but then you oversleep. Well, the last 2 weeks I have not, thanks to my nephew, Tiger, who is texting me and reminding me and yeah, making sure that happens. Anyway, Dmitri didn't make it. It was probably bad form, to be there in Usovo and not to go to the parish church on Sunday, but oh well. Father Mikhaev, you may or may not remember him from a previous diary entry. He had also come for lunch when Dmitri and Laming were newly established at Usovo. He'd come for lunch, and apparently he had not had much to say. So maybe he was a little intimidated, although it could be that wasn't the case, because You know, after all, Usovo and Ilinskaya, these were imperial villages, and members of the imperial family had been part of that community for years. But on the other hand, who knows with this particular individual, and Usovo in the winter was simply not used as much as Ilinskaya was in the summer. So, you know, I'm interested in Dmitri's use of names. So here, or lack thereof. So here he refers to Machayev as the parish priest, but he does not call him by his name. My Russian colleagues, Alexander and Natasha, were able to find out through documents who the parish priest was at that time, but Dmitri never gives us his name. It would be, yeah, I don't know why he wouldn't, but he doesn't. And then this servant, Pribochkin, drives the rabbit out from under the house. Dmitri misses it rather pathetically, according to him, which, again, was he a bad shot? I don't know. You know, there's this overall pretty good movie about Rasputin in Russian called Agonia from, I think, the 1980s. And in it, it shows one of the officer, Sukhotin, who was involved in the Rasputin assassination, trying to teach Dmitri and Felix how to fire a gun. And that, of course, is a complete absurdity. He'd been shooting since he was a boy. And, you know, he may not have been good at it. I don't know. But he sure as heck knew how to handle a gun. Anyway, so we're back to this book about Grand Duke Sergei. And the previous time, Dmitri called it Vоспоминания, which, as I've said, means memoirs. This time, he's using a different word. He's calling it Zapiski. And Zapiski, I mean, the simplest translation of that would be notes. I personally have never heard it used to mean memoirs, but I'm told it can be memoirs. Now, Dmitri uses it when he's writing his diaries. Anytime you hear me say, in a translation of one of his diary entries, starting out with him saying, in the morning I wrote in my diary, what he's literally saying in Russian is, in the morning I wrote my zapiski, my notes, but he's, within the context, it's crystal clear that he's using it to mean diary entries. So, but I don't get the impression that these were Grand Duke Sergei's diaries or memoirs. I just don't know. So Dmitri mentioned this writer by his surname only, Georgievsky, and credits him with having written. He doesn't use the word to edit. He used the word to write this book about Sergei. But the fact that he's using Vоспоминания and then Zapiski really confuses me. But I think the more significant thing here is his use of the name. So in the previous 1915 diary entry, when he talks about beginning this book, he uses the words Uncle Sergei. And here he's being much more formal. He's saying Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich. And that's sort of a strange thing with Dmitri. He does go back and forth. Sometimes Uncle Nicky, he'll say about Nicholas II. Other times, the emperor or the empress, or, yeah, you know, he'll use the more formal. I remember David Chavchavadze being a little shocked when he was helping me with one of Dmitri's letters. He was my mentor for translation, and he was a little shocked. I think it was like a 1914 letter that Dmitri was calling Nicholas Uncle Nicky. And, you know, of course he would have, but as David saw it, with the Tsar, there should always be this certain level of reverence, I guess. I don't know, but I think, yeah, that certainly, as you know, if you've read other Romanov documents, that certainly was not the case within the family. Anyway, we have Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich. Has he ever referred to Aunt Ella as Grand Duchess Yelizaveta Fyodorovna? I don't think so. Yeah, certainly never his sister as Grand Duchess, Maria Pavlovna. Well, anyway, we'll keep an eye on that. Now, Nap, this game that they keep playing, it was taught to Dmitri by Cook, and I can't remember if I mentioned or not that Nap is short for Napoleon. I don't know how to play the game. It was very popular at that time, I guess. I did glance at something online about it. And now we come to Balashova. Is she playing hard to get? It hasn't been that long. He wrote his letter to her the same evening that he arrived in Usovo from Moscow. It probably took it a day to get to Moscow. And what was the date of that? Let me see if I can figure that out. I should have looked that up. Yeah, it was the 14th, and we're up to the 18th. So he's not giving her much time to respond. So I don't know if it's even relevant to ask if she's actually playing hard to get. That's probably an exaggeration. She maybe thinks, and probably rightly, that she shouldn't, immediately respond to this letter. Give it a couple of days. And in fact, he doesn't end up with her. He ends up with Vera Karali. I think that happens in 1915, later in the year. So maybe Alexandra Balashova isn't that into him, or maybe, we'll see if they do get together, and if they do get together, what Dmitri has to say about it. Okay, next time we have, in 1939, Dmitri as homo politicus, you could say, his star in the ascendant, as he sees it, within the political realm, not just of the emigration, but specifically in Great Britain. And our friend Grunwald kind of rolling his eyes at that, and also saying, well, this is a little dangerous. All things considered, it's a little dangerous. 1915, when we return to that, we will have a blizzard and a makeshift chess game. Nothing too exciting, but, we can spend a quiet day with our friend, even if there's, nothing big going on, right? So, short one today. But I hope to see you next time for 1939 and Dmitri's moment in the sun, politically speaking. All right. See you then. Bye.